Hi, music scholars. Mr. Garcia over here, and this week's lesson is the bass. Now, the first step is we're going to go through the Nearpod lesson. I'll also share a student-paced lesson so you can view it and review it in your own time. And the second part of the lesson is I'm going to go into Note Flight and talk about how to write the bass part for your last chord progression. All right, let's start. The bass. Expectations. If you are in live music time, please keep your mic muted. If you have any questions, write them on the chat. If we are in live music time, please turn on your camera, as I will do the same. Keep the conversation of the chat related to music, to the music lesson. Objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will know and understand the function of the bass in a band. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the letter name notes of the bass clef lines and spaces. By the end of this lesson, you will know and understand the musical terms tonic and root. Okay, let's watch this video called The Role of Bass in Music.
Study bassers, let's talk about the role of the bass in music and in bands and what makes it so important and essential. Have you ever noticed that bands always have bass players? You'll see bands that don't have singers or guitar players or keyboard players or drummers, but there's always a bass. And in a rare case, there's not a bass, someone fills in that bass part. So why is that? Why do we need the bass in music? Well, first, we need to look at the three basic areas of music to understand where the bass fits in. So we have melody, harmony, and rhythm. First, we have melody. Melody is the part of the music that the singer sings or a guitar solo. It's usually the singable part of the music. The next area is harmony. Harmony is all about groups of notes played together at the same time. So harmony can be created by a single instrument like guitar or piano. Or harmony can be created by groups of instruments together like a symphony, or groups of singers like a choir or a barbershop quartet. The third basic area of music is rhythm. Rhythm is when all of these musical sounds occur in time. So the bass is so important in music because it sets the foundation for two of the three basic areas of music. It sets the foundation for the rhythm and for the harmony. Most people understand the rhythmic aspect of the bass. When you hear a bass line, you can feel the pulse, you can tap your foot to it. So the bass helps the listener feel the pulse of the music. It helps the listener feel the beat. Now the sound of the bass, it's rarely dreamy and soft. Instead, it's very focused and it's very punchy and percussive. So the bass really acts like a giant drum, but it's not an ordinary drum because it plays pitches, it plays notes. And this is the really important part of the bass that most people don't understand. So when you hear multiple notes at the same time, your brain uses the lowest note that it hears as a reference point. So the bass note is helping your ear understand what all of the other notes should sound like together. I'll give you an example. If I play these three notes on the piano, I can make those same 3 notes sound different to you depending on which bass note I choose to play. So let's try it. So here's our piano notes. It sounds bright and happy. It's a little darker sounding. Sounds kind of mysterious. Sounds harsh. Again. Okay, so you can hear that it's the bass note that's helping your ear decide what all of those other notes should sound like together. It's a very, very powerful note. Now, when you combine the rhythmic role of the bass and the harmonic role of the bass together in a band, you'll really understand why the bass is so important, why it's so essential. In most bands, you're going to have drums, bass, a singer, guitar, or keyboards. And of all of those instruments, the drums are pure rhythm. The other instruments in the band, like guitar or piano, are going to play groups of notes together called chords. Now listen to the drums and guitar together with no bass. So you can probably hear that there's a gap between the drums and the guitar. They're sort of disconnected. So here's the same track with bass. So how does bass connect all of it? Well, the percussive sound of the bass is connecting with the drums to form the rhythmic backbone of the band. But then the notes of the bass connect to the notes of the other instruments. So you're in this important place where you're marrying the pure rhythm of the drums to the notes of the other instruments. Now, beyond gluing the whole band together, the bass is still choosing what the overall harmony sounds like with its notes. So instead of sounding like one chord, I can make that same track sound like 2 chords alternating back and forth. So the rhythmic and harmonic power of the bass is what makes it so essential in music. The bass is helping set the pulse of the music, and it's anchoring the harmony. So it's tying all of the instruments and all of the music together. Now, if you're just starting to learn how to play the bass, you probably think that technique is the biggest part of learning how to play. And technique is important, but the really important stuff for bass players to study is rhythm and harmony.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right there, and then we're gonna move on to the next slide, which is a quiz. To test you if you've been paying attention to the video. What is the role of the bass in a band? A. It has the role of providing all of the rhythm in a song. B. The bass helps to make sense of the chords the piano or guitar might be playing and serves as a musical glue between the drums and chord instruments. C. It has the role of being the melodic aspect of a song. And the correct answer is B. The bass helps to make sense of the chords the piano or guitar might be playing and serves as a musical glue between the drums and chord instruments. Okay, let's talk about the bass clef. As the treble clef, it has 5 lines and 4 spaces, but the notes are different. So there are 2 phrases to help us identify or memorize the lines and the spaces. The best phrase to memorize the lines is good boys do find always. So the first line is G, the second line is B, the third line is D, the fourth line is F, and the fifth line is A. And for the spaces, the best phrase to help you memorize the letter name notes is all cows eat grass. The first space on a bass clef is A, the second space on a bass clef is C, the third space on a bass clef is E, the fourth space on a bass clef is G. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to watch this other video that talks about the bass clef, the notes, and why they are the way that I just taught you in the previous slide. Now I just show you this video many weeks ago when we were at the building in Amani, but I figured to reshare it again because it is very useful. It has a lot of valuable information.
Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. Yeah, it's pretty clear. My notes don't sound high, but I can sing it. Down low, it ain't no lie. 'Cause I got that boom boom that all the tubas chase. All the low notes, all the low places. Yeah, I'm a bass clown, big down on my fourth line. You know that line is F, because F is my sign. Looks like a backwards C. Just add 2 dots and all my lines and spaces go from bottom to the top. You can remember my line goes by good boys to find a way. And for my spaces, say all cows eat grass, that's that I pray. All cows eat grass. And on a grand step, my notes can be found under Missy. And when you get to the bottom, the lowest line is a G. Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. Hey, I'm bringing low notes back. Go ahead and tell this way behind on spare. If you play bass guitar or slide trombone, then read my F cause I go from G to A, from bottom to the top. You can remember that I know my good boys to find a way. It's for my space to say all cows eat grass, this that I pray. All cows eat grass. And on the grand step, my notes can be found under Missy. And when you get to the bottom, the lowest line is G. Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. Because you know I'm all.
All right. So again, another quiz just to test if you were paying attention to the video. What note is the fourth line of the bass clef? Is it the note G? Is it the note C? Is it the note F? And the correct answer is the fourth line of the bass clef is F. Okay, now let's talk about two musical vocabulary words. First, tonic, and then root. The tonic is the first note of a scale. And as an example, I pasted here the C major scale, and we see that the first note is C. So if we are in C major, if we're composing a melody with the C major scale, and I ask you for the tonic, you will say the tonic is C. Now, the root is the first note of a chord. So if I'm playing a C major chord on a piano, the root of that chord would also be C. Okay, they are kind of similar terms, but not specifically equivalent, or they're not synonyms. They are very similar, but not quite. All right. So to recap, the tonic is the first note of a scale, and the root is the first note of a chord. In the example of the C major chord, again, C is the root. Why is this important? Because the bass usually plays the tonic of a melody or the root of a chord progression. The bass is that instrument, it has that job to play the root of a chord progression. And in the assignment that we're dealing with the progression, um, your job is to write the root of the chords on a bass instrument staff. All right, so we'll get to that later. Okay, so this activity is match the pairs of terms in a way that makes sense. If you have the Nearpod student paced lesson, you can do this in your own time. Since I'm recording this video, I'm gonna give you some time to think, and then I'm gonna go ahead and match the pairs. Okay, this is a bass guitar. So there we go. So the root, it's the first note of a chord. And then the tonic is the first note of a scale. And then this is a note on the first line. If we remember the phrases, good boys do find always. So this note is G. All right. Okay, another little quiz to give me some feedback. Did we review material that we have covered before in music class? I believe so. And did we learn some new material as well? Yes, we learned about the function of the bass in a band, or the role of a bass, and also the tonic and the root, more technical music terms. All right. Okay, so that was the first part of this week's music lesson. Now we're going to go into the note flight to work on the bass part. Okay, and you're gonna see that what you have to do is actually really simple. you're going to use the very same last week's assignment. Open it up again, and we're just gonna add to it. All right. I'm actually, yeah, that's perfect. So we have the 1-5-6-4 chord progression that's used in a lot of pop songs, right? So I'm going to add an instrument, of course, a bass, by clicking on the parts icon and then add a part. And I want a bass, so electric bass. And we are going to add a part which it did automatically, right? So electric bass, and then you can click X. Right. So we can add 4 quarter notes that are playing the C. So remember the phrase all cows. So C is the second space. So I wanted quarter notes. All right. And then we're going to follow the chord progression, and I'm going only to focus on the roots. Of course, that's very easy because we had already written the letter name notes of the chords. So now I'm going to go to G, and G is the first line. Then we're going to A, first space, all cows, right? So the first space. And then F, and F is actually at the bottom of the staff. It's not part of the phrases that we just learned, but it is right there. So F, G, and then A. So F is one space below the staff. And then you can go ahead and copy that by clicking Command C or Control C. Then you can paste it by clicking Command V or Control V, depending if you have a Mac or a PC, right? And then we're going to end with a whole note in C. Whole note, and then C, second space. So I want a whole note. Let me try that again. All right. Okay. Now I want to fix this. All right. So now we're going to hear the same piano and also the bass added to it. All right. So that's pretty easy. We just added a bass part to our chord progression. Okay. And you're starting to notice that we're building upon prior knowledge. So the next week we're going to add the drums, and the week after that we're going to add some vocals, and eventually you will be able to make your own composition in actual music notation for your final project. So that's it for the assignment. Again, you're going to export by clicking on the cloud icon. And remember, I need two files. I need a PDF, and then I need the MP3. And then you submit that into the Google Classroom assignment, right? So that's the lesson about the bass and applying it to no flight composition. Okay. So if you have any questions, please write me an email or comment on the assignment in Google Classroom. All right. Take care, guys.